Coming up on this V12 production special report, train wrecks in 2025. First, what happens when cars and trucks go up against trains? Well, the outcome typically is not good. Luckily, locomotive cabs have evolved greatly over the years. We'll talk about some of the features that keep train crews safe. Next, we'll examine body cam video that shows police warning a railroad about a broken rail. But just hours later, a train was on the ground. Plus, we'll talk about how this locomotive ended up on its side after a bizarre accident. And why is this engine breathing smoke? All that and more is next on this V12 production special report. Hello and welcome to this V12 production special report, and thanks for joining us. Here in North America, railroads are essential to our way of life. They operate 24/7, 365 days of the year in all kinds of weather. Of course, freight trains make up the majority of the traffic on rails running through the United States, and many of these trains carry hazardous materials through our cities, towns, and neighborhoods. Major rail incidents are rare, but they do happen. Fortunately, many derailments are minor and occur at low speeds in places like rail yards. But the ones happening on main lines that go through populated areas are often very visible to the public and covered by media outlets. Events like what happened in East Palestine, Ohio in 2023 are still being talked about today. But in this special, I want to discuss the incidents in 2025 that didn't receive extensive media coverage. I want you to understand what happened, but also why and how we can prevent things like this from happening in the future. And at the end, we'll talk about some statistics and where you can learn more about incidents in your area. But first, we need to discuss something that happens far too often in the United States. Of course, I'm talking about grade crossing accidents. It's February 4th, 2025, and the engineer of a Utah Transit Authority front-runner train is laying on the horn. Another surveillance camera shows us the impact. The car is totaled in seconds. You can see this crossing is equipped with multiple gates and lights. It even has something called a grade crossing indicator to let the train operators know if the gates have come down as they should. So, how did all this happen? Well, you might want to blame the driver of that SUV, but take a look at the moments right before the crash. That's right, you can see the SUV was rear-ended and pushed into the path of that oncoming train. You'll also see that, fortunately, the driver was able to get out of the car and walk away before the vehicle was hit. A UTA spokesman told me the train was going 67 miles per hour when the emergency brakes were applied, and it ultimately hit the SUV going 32 miles per hour. Of course, looking at the video now, we might ask, why didn't the driver just pull forward or back up? Well, I'd imagine being in the path of an oncoming train is probably a shocking experience where it's hard to make decisions. But for future reference, you can actually drive through the arms at a grade crossing. Take a look at the design at this crossing in Atlanta, Georgia. The gate arms will actually allow road vehicles to push through them to get back to safety. Luckily, according to the UTA, there were no injuries after this grade crossing collision, but front-runner train damages were estimated to be in the six-figure range. So that's an example of what happens when a train collides with a car, but when trucks are involved, the damage can be much worse. This truck couldn't quite make its delivery. It was turning into a feed mill when its trailer was split in half by a CPKC freight train. This happened Friday, April 4th, 2025 in Sleepy Eye, Minnesota. The dashcam footage and a few photos were posted on the Brown County Sheriff's Office's Facebook page. They say the occupants here were treated at the scene for minor injuries. As you can see, the truck's trailer was totaled and its load went everywhere, including on this Canadian Pacific EMD GP20C ECO. The locomotive is probably still operable, but some of its lights were smashed and handrails bent. In its press release, the Brown County Sheriff's Office gave the public several reminders about grade crossing safety. And one included looking both ways before crossing the tracks. A stop sign at the crossing is visible in the dashcam video. This next collision ended in a fiery mess, and it's unclear what will become of the historic locomotive that was involved. Behind barbed wire, a piece of history, charred but hopefully not forgotten. Looking at it now, it's hard to imagine that this locomotive was once painted in gold. And that paint job commemorated a very important milestone. But before we get into the history lesson, we need to talk about what happened to this thing. The crossing here on Stonewall Tell Road lies near the border of the city of South Fulton and Union City, Georgia, around 17 miles southwest of downtown Atlanta. It's business as usual on this hot July day, but things were much different on July 9th, 2025. This CSX train had just collided with a heavy wrecker and was on fire. These photos are courtesy of the Union City Fire Department. They say the driver of that wrecker was ejected from the vehicle. He was later taken to Grady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta. The Union City Fire Department said the passenger riding in that truck had minor injuries and the train crew was not injured. Now, when I was out here on July 13th, 2025, I did not notice any signs prohibiting trucks from using this crossing. As you can see and hear, the crossing here has an electronic bell but no gates. And here's the blue ENS or Emergency Notification System sign that has the crossing's number and contact information to report emergencies. It's unclear exactly what happened out here on the day of the crash, but somehow a fire got started on CSX 6063 after it collided with that truck. CSX 6440 was the trailing unit that day, but it appears to be undamaged and still in service. Now, number 6063 has been pulling freight for a long time. The unit is a General Motors Locomotive Division GP40-2, originally built in 1972. As you can see, the damage here is significant. Bent handrails, broken windshields, and a melted number board. Of course, the paint on the conductor's side of the unit has almost completely burned off. The engineer's side is a little better, although it was darkened by the fire, soot, and smoke. No doubt the interior is in bad shape too. But this is a far cry from how this machine started its life. It was originally built for the Baltimore and Ohio and numbered GM50. That designation commemorated 50 years of building locomotives for General Motors Locomotive Division. I should mention General Motors no longer owns EMD. It's now called Electromotive Diesel and is owned by Progress Rail, which is a subsidiary of Caterpillar. Sadly, its golden look didn't last. This EMD GP40-2 would be repainted into the chassis livery in 1984. And it would wear a couple of other paint schemes after that. It's unclear what will ultimately become of this burned-up unit. Unconfirmed internet chatter suggests that upon retirement, number 6063 was supposed to end up at the B&O Railroad Museum in Baltimore, Maryland. And perhaps, at the least, it can be cosmetically restored to its former gilded glory. Fortunately, the locomotive in that last accident did not derail, but the scene was much different in this incident. A wild scene in Somerset County, Pennsylvania, after a train collided with a triaxle coal truck. It happened Monday, March 10th, 2025 in Friedens, which is around 70 miles southeast of Pittsburgh. News station WJAC reported 3 people, 2 on the train and the truck's driver, were taken to the hospital with non-serious injuries. The Listy VFC posted these photos on Facebook. This locomotive, number 6938, ended up digging itself into a ditch. It's an ex-Western Maryland GP40-2 built in 1979. It looks like the engine also took out this crossing gate. This photo shows the rear of the trailing locomotive was also damaged. Eventually, massive side boom tractors were brought in to re-rail number 6938. The truck involved in all this appears to be totaled, but it's unclear if the locomotives can be repaired. As you probably know, many police agencies record their interactions with members of the public, and sometimes their body-worn and dash cameras capture wild scenes, including grade crossing accidents. A police officer's body cam shows the moment a train slammed into a truck in Grovetown, Georgia. Luckily, according to the Grovetown Police Department, no injuries were reported, but You might be wondering, what led up to all this, and were there any warning signs? It all started around midday on October 10th, 2025. And by the way, Grovetown is just west of Augusta, Georgia. It looks like the landing gear of this 18-wheeler's trailer had gotten caught on the crossing on Catherine Street.
It ain't moving at all?
Fortunately, it sounds like folks here know the railroad needs to be notified.
Are you trying to call somebody?
Yeah, the train company.
The train coming?
You're on a train? Yeah, I gotta let them know that. Because the train comes through here every day, multiple times a day. Hey, did y'all get a hold of the train company?
Yeah, we notified them.
Okay, do they have a train that's on the tracks anywhere near here?
No, I don't think they did.
Okay.
Unfortunately, there was a train headed their way.
We just had a train hit the trucks on the tracks. The train hit this guy.
A CSX train is now stopped after hitting that truck. The trailer was split in half and plastic pallets are all over the ground. Right after the accident, a nearby officer is discussing the signage at the crossing with the truck driver.
Hey, you didn't see the signs?
What sign?
Right there, no trucks.
No, I didn't see
There's one back there too, no trucks.
I didn't see the signs because usually I go this way and the GPS tell me to go that way.
Yeah, you can't. There's no
So I
trucks.
didn't
This was a refrigerated trailer, but it looks more like a cold cut combo now.
What were you hauling?
Huh?
What were you hauling?
Subway.
Subway, okay.
Subway. I had 3 months Subway.
Nothing hazardous or nothing like that.
And apparently, this happens all the time at this crossing.
Yeah, like I said, this happens like monthly. Like not this, but trucks getting stuck, it happens a lot.
Now, I've done several videos about grade crossing accidents, and I always feel the need to explain what you should do if you encounter a situation like this. Well, if there's no immediate danger, look out for a blue and white sign like this one. These are called Emergency Notification System, or ENS signs. They have an 800 number you can call along with the crossings number that you can give to the operator to tell them exactly where you are.
Hey guys, you know how trucks always get stuck here?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I got out in time and the other officer, he called and I called, but it just wasn't enough time.
yeah, to stop, yeah.
According to a motor vehicle crash report prepared by the Georgia State Patrol, the truck driver was issued a citation for failure to obey a traffic control device with signs present on scene instructing trucks to turn right before the train tracks due to clearance. In addition to body cams and dash cams, surveillance cameras sometimes capture unusual trackside events. This was the scene in the village of Hinsdale, which is a western suburb of Chicago. The nose of an SUV is hanging over the rails. Despite being just over the edge, the vehicle and crossing gate were obliterated by this metro train. This all happened on December 8th, 2025. And fortunately, the Village of Hinsdale Police Department said the driver of the SUV had minor injuries. Months before that grade crossing accident, the Village of Hinsdale Police Department posted a video of an unrelated but still very dangerous situation. This commuter must have been in a hurry because they decided to go under a stopped metro train. I don't think you need me to tell you how risky that decision was. The video you just saw was used as a tool by the police department to promote railroad safety. What you're about to see is intended to do the same thing, but this demonstration featured a full-scale locomotive intentionally slamming into a car. It's 2018 on the Aberdeen, Carolina and Western Railway in Star, North Carolina. This Dodge Charger has just been totaled by a single locomotive. Inside the car, a disturbing scenario. A man, well, a dummy actually, with a child in the back seat. And on impact, that child doll actually ends up flying out the car window. Several different angles show us this thing did next to nothing to the locomotive. The impact didn't even slow it down. The demonstration here highlights why you should never try to beat a train across the tracks at a railroad crossing. The train pretty much always wins. Now, obviously, this was all staged. Many freight trains are much longer than what we just saw and have much more momentum and could take nearly a mile or more to stop. As you've probably gathered by now, railroading can be a dangerous job. Fortunately, over the years, significant advances have been made to keep train crews safe. And that includes improvements to the designs of locomotive cabs. In North America, two primary cab designs exist: the older standard cab design and the more modern wide-nose safety cab. The latter is what you'll see on modern road locomotives, the ones you see hauling massive, long-distance freight trains. The nose of the engine is heavy steel, thicker than sheet metal, and vertical collision posts inside provide additional strength. Of course, the wide nose here provides added crew protection compared to what's known as the standard cab, which was present on most new locomotives into the mid-1980s. The visibility on these is good, but the front-end protection could be better. This standard cab locomotive fared pretty well, considering it hit a truck hauling rocks. This happened in Aurora, Colorado on January 15, 2025, and Aurora Fire Rescue said the train crew was okay. Now, passenger units typically feature a more streamlined design than freight locomotives, but they do usually have wide noses providing crew protection. Amazingly, the Caltrain engineer in this collision was okay after hitting track equipment in San Bruno, California in March 2022. The NTSB determined the roadway worker in charge was at fault here, but also cited his excessive workload. This Amtrak GE P42DC received substantial damage to its nose after it hit a loaded log truck in Colleton County, South Carolina on October 14, 2025. According to Colleton County Fire Rescue, the train stopped a third of a mile from the point of impact, and luckily, no one was injured. Now, Amtrak modified the original design of this locomotive type to have a fiberglass bolt-on nose to expedite repairs after collisions. Okay, so both passenger and freight locomotives are also equipped with anti-climbers. These are designed to stop one rail vehicle from overriding another. Unfortunately, they aren't always effective at stopping a locomotive from overriding a freight car. So we've talked a lot about the nose of the locomotive, but what about windows? Well, according to FRA regulations, they should be able to withstand a ballistic impact with a standard .22 caliber long rifle lead bullet of 40 grains, and also the impact of a cinder block. That goes for front and side windows. All right, those are some details about the front end of the locomotive, but what happens when things go wrong behind the cab? Did you happen to see this wild video out of Arizona of smoke billowing from a BNSF locomotive? This happened May 15th, 2025, and the footage here is courtesy of the Flagstaff Fire Department. They say the locomotive overheated and caught fire, but a fuel cutoff was activated, containing the fire to the engine compartment. And the fire department says this dramatic image resulted from smoke hitting an inversion layer. This basically means that all that smoke hit a layer of warm air which stopped it from rising any farther. The locomotive in question here appears to be a General Electric AC 4400 CW built in 2003. Now, some locomotives out there show battle scars around their exhaust stacks. Sometimes locomotives blow turbos. Basically, seals fail on the turbo and lubricating oil gets into the diesel engine and starts to combust. This causes the diesel engine to run away, but it's unclear if that's what happened here in Flagstaff. Now, just because it looks like there's smoke, it doesn't necessarily mean there's fire. This covered hopper looked like it was smoking as it passed by Norfolk Southern's Inman Yard in Atlanta, Georgia. But if you look closely, you can see it's not on fire, but actually leaking its contents. Next up, we're going to examine several derailments. The first two got a lot of people's attention, including a U.S. Senator.
I have never seen a rail break.
I mean, it'll bounce, but it's going to derail something.
Yeah.
We'll just let them know that there's probably about a 3-foot section that's missing.
Yeah, there's a big chunk taken out of this rail, as seen in body cam video from the Tyrone, Georgia Police Department. 4 hours after making that discovery, with sirens blaring, police were rushing back to the same crossing. Part of a freight train had derailed. So now, let's analyze the time leading up to this derailment and the aftermath. Now here's something you don't see every day. This is one of the covered hoppers from that derailment. The derailment happened at the Tyrone Road grade crossing on Tuesday, March 25th, 2025. Several cars from the end of a southbound CSX freight train ended up on the ground. Fortunately, according to the town of Tyrone, there were no injuries and no hazardous materials were on the train. I shot this footage 2 days after the derailment happened. The tracks were back open, but the cleanup continued. As you can see, when I shot this video, the road was shut down, but the crossing had been repaved. Things looked a little different around noon on the Tuesday of the derailment. These officers were investigating the same crossing, which appeared to be damaged.
Just to let you know, I've got a broken rail on the railroad at Tyrone Crossing.
Okay, so following the derailment, I read a couple of local media reports that the Tyrone Police Department had actually called CSX to warn them about the damage. A spokesman with CSX confirmed to me that those reports were correct. He also said, in part, quote, "Every day we work with law enforcement and emergency response personnel throughout our extensive network and have good communication with matters like this. Our team is conducting a thorough investigation of the incident to implement improved measures to ensure this does not happen again."
I've got 2 pieces of the rail out of the track, so CSX has been contacted.
Eventually, this deputy with the Fayette County Sheriff's Office would move the rail out of the road.
You don't have any extra rail just laying around, do you?
Well,
Then they got someone in the town's Public Works Department to put out some traffic cones. This all happened around noon on that Tuesday. Just about 4 hours later, a train was on the ground. Police told the fire department what they thought caused the damage to the rail at the crossing.
So earlier today, a low boy pulled out the track over there.
Yep.
CSX was notified a 3-foot section of your track is missing. Do not send any trains down here.
That was earlier today?
That was at 1:30?
Yeah. No, it was before lunch.
12? So dispatch already called CSX and told them do not send any trains.
And take a look at this, the part of the rail the officers were investigating earlier. So now the railroad had quite a mess on its hands, and crews would work into the night to get the track back open. The cleanup took a few days. It included sucking up whatever type of grain was on board one of the derailed cars with a vacuum truck and then loading it into dump trucks. Workers were also cutting up some of the debris. And big side boom tractors were also on the scene to upright and remove the derailed cars. Okay, this is how the railroad reported this accident to the Federal Railroad Administration. X-64725 traversed over a section of rail that was missing at the Tyrone Road crossing at the A&B 836.1, causing a derailment of the last 6 cars in the consist. The cause code used was M506, track damage caused by non-railroad interference with track structure. Just 6 weeks later, CSX had another derailment in the metro Atlanta area. From the air, you can see a messy derailment. Railroad ties are everywhere. And workers have scaled this overturned gondola and are beginning the cleanup and salvage process. Nearly a dozen rail cars are piled up right behind this Georgia neighborhood. This all happened in the morning on May 9th, 2025 in Smyrna, which is a suburb just north of Atlanta. It appears the derailed cars took out one of the signal masts when they came off the tracks. As you can see in these images from Google Earth before the derailment, there was a switch here where one track became 2. The scene looks pretty bad, but fortunately, according to the Smyrna Fire Department, there were no injuries and no hazardous materials were released. And it looks to me like the entire derailment was contained to the CSX right-of-way. Although some of these cars did take out several trees. That's what this excavator was working on clearing. Now, railroads typically call in contractors when things like this happen. I spotted R.J. Corman and HG Railroad Services out here today. This is hard work, but these guys make it look easy. Okay, so most of the freight cars here are pretty standard. Covered hoppers, a tank car, cars hauling lumber, and here are 2 side boom tractors working to upright a boxcar. But these gondolas are a little more specialized. They haul cross ties for the railroad. And that's what you see all over the ground here. These cross ties are made of wood and most likely treated with a preservative known as creosote, giving them their dark appearance. Maintenance of way cars like these can be some of the oldest a railroad owns because they don't interchange with other railroads. The Association of American Railroads has rules governing the free interchange of freight cars between railroads. Those rules include an age limit depending on when the car was built. However, I do not know how old these gondolas are. You can see these are resting near a new housing development. Luckily for the railroad, contractors were able to easily stage all their equipment in this area. The tracks here are part of CSX's historic Western and Atlantic Main Line, which goes from Atlanta to Chattanooga. The line basically established the city of Atlanta before the Civil War, and as far as I know, it's still owned by the state of Georgia and on a very long-term lease to CSX. Atlanta was the line's terminus, marked by the 0 milepost. A little more than 2 miles to the west of the derailment site is downtown Smyrna, with its distinctive double-tracked S-curve. Needless to say, this is an important stretch of track, and having it blocked will cost the railroad time and money. Okay, so this is how the railroad reported this accident to the Federal Railroad Administration. M64707 derailed 17 cars due to an overheated journal, and the cause code used was E53C, journal roller bearing, failure from overheating. After the derailment in Smyrna, Senator John Ossoff called for a strengthening in rail safety from CSX. He also launched an inquiry with then CSX CEO Joseph Henricks. I wasn't able to find anything further about this inquiry after Senator Ossoff posted his press release on June 2nd. All right, next we'll look at a derailment that happened south of Atlanta. A quiet Saturday morning in Barnesville, Georgia. The silence is only interrupted by a locomotive horn as a crew with short-line Cater-Parrott RailNet works its interchange with Norfolk Southern. There probably won't be any NS trains going through town for the next several hours, and here's why. Around 3 miles east of town, track crews are working hard to get the Norfolk Southern line back open. As you can see, off to the side of the right-of-way, cars are on their sides. And some of the cargo they were hauling has come out. This derailment, involving at least part of a Norfolk Southern train, happened in the afternoon on Friday, January 3rd, 2025. And this is in Barnesville, which is around 60 miles south of Atlanta. This is ex-central of Georgia right-of-way, which goes from Atlanta to Macon. Just looking at my drone footage of the scene, I counted 4 covered hoppers and 4 boxcars on the ground. Of course, boxcars can be used to haul all kinds of things. In this case, it looks like these were carrying giant rolls of paper. And yeah, at least to me, from this high angle, these kind of look like giant rolls of toilet paper. And there's a whole pile of these rolls over here. If you didn't know, Georgia Industries are big players in the production of paper products. Now, crews likely worked overnight to get this wreckage cleared. I saw equipment staged on either side of the derailment scene. One of those staging areas was more than a mile away, forcing crews to drive their machines through the woods. Meanwhile, workers closer to the site looked like they were wrapping up their work while I was here on the morning of January 4th. Okay, so the priority here is to safely get the wreckage removed so the tracks can be restored and the trains can start rolling again. All this debris and the derailed cars will likely be removed at a later date. The cause code listed for this on the Rail Equipment Accident Incident Report was T207, broken rail, detail fracture from shelling or head check. Now, let's take a quick look at how a derailment was prevented. This all happened in October 2025. A viewer sent me these pictures of a broken rail at a crossing in Liberty, South Carolina. He said a pedestrian saw the issue and called police, and police then called Norfolk Southern. And their crews worked for several hours to get the rail replaced. All right, the next incident we're going to look at did not have a happy ending. This Wisconsin and Southern locomotive ended up on its side, and the derailment here in Hartford injured 2 people. So what caused all this? Well, it could be argued that it was all just a freak accident. This body cam footage is courtesy of the Hartford, Wisconsin Police Department. And Hartford is around 35 miles northwest of Milwaukee, and the Wisconsin and Southern is a regional railroad operated by Watco that runs in southern Wisconsin and northeastern Illinois. This all happened around 9:10 in the morning on June 30th, 2025. In this shot, you can see 2 locomotives on the ground. Another one was off the tracks nearby. And it looks like the lumber that one of the cars was carrying is spread all over the ground. Looking at the locomotive's truck, which houses the traction motors that turn the wheels, you can tell this is an Electromotive Division General Purpose or GP Series unit, specifically a GP38-2 built in 1979. In addition to number 3894, 2 other GP38-2s were also in this lash-up, 3893 and 3890. These still images are courtesy of Hartford Fire and Rescue. After the derailment, first responders had to prevent a diesel fuel leak from one of those locomotives from spreading to a nearby waterway. Now, railroads investigate their own derailments and report the findings to the Federal Railroad Administration. In a Rail Equipment Accident Incident Report, which is available on the FRA's website, here's what the Wisconsin and Southern said happened. Quote, as they approached the quad lead switch at milepost 124.54, they encountered a tree across the tracks. The crew struck the tree, dragging it with them until the tree struck the quad lead switch. This caused the main line switch to line for the lead, causing all 3 locomotives and 16 cars to derail. Fortunately, no hazardous materials were released from any of the freight cars. According to a railroad injury and illness summary, 2 of the crew members on board were hurt. The form says the conductor was treated for a collapsed lung, minor brain bleed, and bruised ribs. And a student conductor was diagnosed with a concussion. Okay, let's take a look at where all this happened. These images are courtesy of Google Earth. The derailment occurred at a lead that serves an industrial park. And there's a switch or turnout here on the main line that can be thrown to get trains onto that lead. Although it may be pretty obvious, let's see how turnouts work. This is file footage of a setup that's similar to the one encountered by the train in the Hartford derailment. In this case, a hand throw moves a switch rod which is connected to points which move, determining which track the train will take. The points are tapered, allowing them to make flush contact with the other rails. And the guardrails here, and what's known as a frog, make sure wheels stay pointed in the right direction. Some switches are manually operated while others are powered and can be remotely thrown. Now, I would imagine it would take a lot of force to dislodge the points in a turnout. According to the Rail Equipment Accident Incident Report, the train here was going 37 miles per hour when it hit the tree and derailed. Okay, so it's not all that uncommon for trains to hit trees or limbs. Oftentimes, they're just pushed out of the way or obliterated. But that's not always the case. Here's a recording of a minor incident on CSX.
CSX Equipment Defect Detector. Milepost 564.0.
This happened in Atlanta in September 2024 after prolonged storms pounded this part of Georgia.
Dispatcher, Jacksonville, answer.
That is G346, over.
G346, 25, over.
That coal train hit a tree just north of the DD, and we drug some debris of it across the DD, got dragging equipment, axle 1.
Fortunately, the crew was able to solve the problem without incident.
Dispatcher, Jacksonville, answer, over.
G346, we're on the move, got the limb removed, over.
The next day, I went to the scene. I think this was the tree in question, but it's hard to say for sure. Now, according to the Rail Equipment Accident Incident Report from the derailment in Hartford, 2 of the locomotives and 14 of the cars were scrapped due to extensive damage. That form says there was $2,390,000 worth of equipment damage and $121,000 of damage to the right-of-way. But ultimately, let's just hope the 2 people who were injured are doing better now. A viewer of mine took a few photos of the accident scene about a week after this derailment happened. From this angle, number 3893 looks like it's in okay shape, but I can't say the same about the 2 other engines. Moving on to this Union Pacific derailment outside of Gordon, Texas on August 12, 2025. According to the Palo Pinto Emergency Services District 1, there were no injuries. They say the flames in this video were part of a liquid flare process to dispose of propane inside a heavily damaged tank car. According to the Rail Equipment Accident Incident Report that was submitted to the FRA, excessive buff force on one of the cars caused one of the rails under it to roll during normal train operations. The form went on to say the placement of that car in the consist caused that excessive buff force and, quote, train makeup rules being adjusted by operating practices to prevent future occurrence. And by the way, buff force is the compression between a piece of rail equipment's couplers. Meanwhile, this Union Pacific derailment in Colorado is best described as an act of nature. This happened on December 2nd, 2025, just south of Whitewater. According to the Colorado Public Utilities Commission, this was likely caused by a rockfall along the right-of-way. 2 locomotives and several coal hoppers ended up partially in the Gunnison River. And since this was a remote area, first responders had to use a high-rail truck to get to the crash site and rescue the train crew. Luckily, they were okay. As you just saw, our first responders have to be ready for anything. Because of this, multiple railroads now have custom rail cars to help train these brave men and women.
Did you pull on the other side of the bridge confirming train fire?
Right there.
From fires to derailments and other dangerous situations, our firefighters, police officers, and paramedics have to be ready to respond to emergencies on the railroad. And this train is what CSX will be using to prepare them. This is known as the Responder Instant Training, or RIT train. I found it parked next to CSX's Ready Center in Atlanta, Georgia. And here's the newest addition to this consist, number 911343. That number honors the 343 firefighters lost on September 11th, 2001. The unit was unveiled at the beginning of 2025. It was built by CSX's Locomotive shop in Huntington, West Virginia. And number 911343 did used to be a functioning engine. It's a former ST70 series locomotive made by what was then General Motors' Electromotive division. Wide-nosed, safety cab diesels like this are very common on the rails today. Whether they feature EMD designs or the more common General Electric cab. Of course, this thing is basically just a giant prop for training. As you can see, its exhaust and radiator fans have been covered up, and it's also missing its windshield wipers. But the cab windows do feature something extra: thin blue and red line flags backing police officers and firefighters. Now, the locomotive itself isn't really a locomotive anymore. CSX says the unit will be used to replicate incidents that could be encountered during a rail emergency, like an engine fire or crew rescue. And here's an interesting modification. Instead of diesel, the unit's fuel tank carries 4,900 gallons of water. It can simulate tears or punctures in the fuel tank. Now, major derailments like this one from 2020 in Lilburn, Georgia are rare, but they do happen. That red substance on the ground is red-dyed diesel fuel, indicating there was a leak. This train's crew also had to escape the cab after the locomotive ended up on its side. This example shows just how critical first responder training is. Now, as you probably know, trains carry all kinds of dangerous goods. Every day, hazardous materials travel through our neighborhoods, cities, and towns. And, unfortunately, we've seen what can happen when things go wrong. At this point, the devastating Norfolk Southern derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, back in 2023 is probably burned into all of our memories. There's no doubt, our first responders have to be familiar with the equipment that hauls hazardous materials. And these tank cars make up a large part of the RIT train. They represent the various types of tank cars that are on the rails right now. And some of these cars have been fitted with walkways, allowing people participating in the training to walk on top. The cars in this consist let first responders get hands-on training with domes, fittings, and valves. They can also practice installing kits that mitigate leaks and learn where to find critical information about a rail car and its contents. Of course, this train can be moved up and down the CSX system and can be used for full-scale exercises.
CSX, Hazmat.
This is footage from a chemical spill training exercise in Philadelphia in 2022. The city's fire department was training alongside members of the California National Guard. This was a small part of the dense urban terrain exercise. As you can see, folks participating in the training could get hands-on with a specially built CSX tank car. They got a first-hand look at the fittings and valves that are on these cars, and, of course, got to put on and test out the protective equipment they'd need in a situation like this. Lots of freight travels through big cities like Philly every day, along with countless passengers. And these professionals have to be prepared for anything.
You never know when a chemical attack is going to happen, let alone a chemical spill. And it's important to practice before it actually happens. So these kind of events allow us to have the knowledge and training prior to reacting to a real-world scenario wherever it may happen.
As you might already know, there are other safety trains out there. Norfolk Southern has its own variation of this, pulled by fully functional, specially painted locomotives. Trains like these are a tremendous asset for our first responders. Let's just hope they never have to put their training into action. Firefighters responded to this Union Pacific derailment in Caliente, California on February 18, 2025. Fortunately, they didn't find anyone injured and none of the rail cars were leaking. In fact, according to the Kern County Fire Department, the tank cars were empty and posed no hazard. The primary cause code listed on the rail equipment accident incident report is H501, improper train makeup at initial terminal. The investigation also found one of the train's locomotives had defective dynamic brakes. Cleanup crews had their work cut out for them here in Powersville, Georgia. This Norfolk Southern train derailed here on the morning of June 28, 2025. These photos are courtesy of the Peach County Sheriff's Office. They said the incident was caused by all the heavy rain the area had experienced. And this photo appears to show a washout. Now, Powersville is around 20 miles south of Macon, Georgia. As you can see, an army of trucks and other equipment was out here to get this mess cleaned up and the line reopened. Fortunately, the Peach County Sheriff's Office said there were no injuries and no hazardous materials were on the cars. Some residents had to be evacuated after this CPKC derailment in Morrowville, Louisiana. It happened on May 7, 2025. According to the Rail Equipment Accident Incident Report, the train first hit a tree, derailing the lead locomotive. Then the bridge it was going over gave way. This CSX derailment in Indianapolis on April 6, 2025 was quite a mess. Covered hoppers ended up falling off this bridge and spilling. The cause code for this was listed on the FRA's Rail Equipment Accident Incident Report as T208, broken rail, engine burn fracture. According to the Indianapolis Fire Department, that white substance that you see that spilled was not hazardous. No, it was actually just cornstarch. Before we end this special report, I want to leave you with some helpful information about train wrecks and grade crossing collisions. Now, railroads investigate their own derailments and other incidents and report the findings to the Federal Railroad Administration. Railroads must report accidents and incidents to the FRA if the damages rise to a certain monetary threshold. According to the FRA, that threshold will be $12,600 in 2026, a $200 increase from 2025. To do these reports, they use Form 54. You've heard me reference these forms throughout this video. They are available online to be viewed by the public. According to the FRA's website, accidents under the monetary threshold still must be recorded and accident information must be shared with the FRA as requested. All derailments and grade crossing collision data for 2025 was not available at the time I uploaded this video, but according to an FRA Rail Safety Overview report, there were 1,094 derailments in the United States in 2024, a slight decrease from 2023. Grade crossing accidents are a major problem in the United States. According to FRA data, there were 2,264 collisions between vehicles and trains at railroad crossings in 2024, an increase from 2023. I'll be including a link in the description of this video where you can look up train accidents in your area. Of course, there were many incidents that I didn't cover in this video, but I still hope you learned something and found it informative. If you did, please share this special report with your friends and family. Anyway, that's it for now. I'd encourage you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We hit 100,000 in 2025 and I hope to keep that momentum going. As always, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.